With the IMF predicting the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression, we can expect things to get worse for millions of Americans who were already living on the financial brink. As Dylan Ratigan tweeted, U.S. policy is to destroy the small biz, service, Uber drivers, etc., and ensuring massive support for largest companies. There are two classes, those who control tax money and those who are left to beg for $1,200.
And now, friend of the show, David Dayen, is reporting that your banks could even take those stimulus checks to pay existing debts, leaving people with even less money. Dylan Ratigan is the co-host of Truth or Skepticism with Tom Sosnoff at TastyTrade and author of Greedy Bastards. He joins us now. Dylan, it's great to see you. Thanks for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
It's an honor to join you in such an occasion.
We appreciate it very much. So, Dylan, I mean, you were one of the original voices to sounding the alarm about the 2008 financial bailout. What are the conditions that you're seeing right now that have caused you such alarm?
This is different because this is a biological crisis that has nothing to do with economics in any way, shape, or form, and it's creating a global unification in, the positive and the negative in terms of awareness, simultaneous awareness. And so that is a profound dynamic that has nothing to do with money. And then you have a second crisis, which is an economic crisis from the shutdown. Italy's losing $100 billion a month. There's a million horrifying statistics and anywhere you want to find them on the economic side. And then you have the risk of a financial crisis, which is really the third derivative of it, right? So the issue is a biological crisis, the immediate consequence is the economic crisis, and then a threat is the financial crisis. And the first thing that the federal government did was just ensure that there won't be a financial crisis at the same time that there's an economic crisis and a biological crisis. And they basically relinquished the biological crisis to the states. So I think we're going to see a political shift that's going to be, move more and more. We're going to see a bigger issue around state and federal taxes and rights and responsibilities, because it's one thing, okay, if the federal stockpile of PPE is yours, so to speak, using their administration's words, no problem. But we're going to have to restructure where the taxes are paid, because if New York needs to have its own stockpile because that stockpile is yours at the federal government, no problem. But we're going to need to pay higher state taxes and lower federal taxes going forward to ensure the capacity for our sovereignty. I mean, conversations like that are coming, and so you're going to see that entire political dynamic play out. The reason I sent my sort of hostile tweet, as it were, is because you have the two most vulnerable communities in all the crises. One is anybody with the virus itself, especially with any respiratory risk, whatever their age may be. And then the second is the people at the short end of the stick economically, not just in the United States, but globally. And those two communities are the least addressed in any intervention of any kind, certainly on the economic side, haphazardly on the biological side. Some places have done a good job, obviously, but so it's frustrating.
Yeah. Well, and talk about what were the economic impacts in terms of sort of a restructuring of our economy out of the 2008 collapse? And as you said, the financial crisis here is almost like a side crisis. There's so many things going on. But what do you...
derivative crisis.
Right. So what do you think that the economic restructuring will be coming out of this crisis, given the federal government response we've seen?
I think it's impossible to really know. I mean, obviously, they've set the table for sort of mass wealth consolidation. They figured out how to wire the system legislatively and economically and financially in 2008-9. It took them a couple of years and a lot of debating and blood, sweat, and tears and Dodd-Frank and TARP and years of media and people like me complaining and all this. But they figured it out. So now they were able to really do it in a week or two, much more efficiently without any big legislative hoo-ha. And so they've set the table to do that, but I don't know whether it's going to ultimately succeed, because I just feel like the political and economic risk is so significant that I feel like you're going to start to see. I don't know how long that'll last, honestly. It's just, I think that the situation is more black and white than that for too many people, so that they can. But yes, they've set the table for a massive wealth consolidation as it stands.
And Dylan, I mean, how long does it take based on your experience with 2008, how long does it take for that? Because political consciousness of that is like a lagging indicator. Like you saw Occupy Wall Street in 2011, after 3 years after the financial crisis. Is it going to take that long for political consciousness to catch up this time around with this bailout and the reaction to this crisis? Is it going to materialize at all? What do you think?
I think the bailout is a secondary issue for any social engagement that's going to occur, because I believe that the torn seam in society is the economic crisis. It is the people that have no cash right now and can't work because they're attached to whether it's events at Disney, movie theaters, anything that moves anything, whether it's any object that goes anywhere is not moving, whether it's an airplane or a car or whatever, or anything associated. That is where this is going to originate. And I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but that's where the problem is, because America is not doing the obvious. The obvious response right now is $2,000 UBI for the duration of the crisis, having nothing to do with the politics of UBI and working and who's working, whatever. It's cheaper as a matter of policy to foam the runway with a few $1,000s a month and keep the thing standing than to let it go into chaos and try and bring it back magically. The reason they put people on respirators is because if you can stay on a respirator and let a machine breathe for you for a while, you may stay alive long enough that you can then recover and get better. But if you don't have a respirator, you can't buy that black hour, because you'll die. And UBI right now is the equivalent of a ventilator for the economy, which is why you're seeing every other country do it. America is the only country that hasn't done it.
And so how are other countries...
It's not a political decision.
Right. And so how are other countries handling this, and how do you think that will impact their recovery versus ours going forward?
Well, every other country immediately, the first maneuver, the first policy, whether it's in Spain, whether it's in Australia, whether it's in Canada, you can go down the list, is to just send between $1,000 and $2,000 a month to everybody for the duration of the crisis and tell them not to move.
Right.
The best mandate came out of the Netherlands, where they basically said, listen, this goes back into February, though. Europe was long ahead. I was watching this happen. I couldn't believe it. I was in Milan. I left. I was like, this can't keep happening. Barcelona. The Netherlands said, listen, any business that was in a healthy condition before the virus needs to be in a healthy condition after the virus. Use the government and the banking system over the next few months to figure out how you're going to do that. And in the meantime, suspend all payments of anything.
Yeah.
Or fill the hole with government money.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
the ultimate narcotic, right? We're like, again, this isn't a financial crisis. This is not your fault that there's a virus that's created a global pandemic and shut down the world. Not your fault. Even if you're the devil and you're the worst banker in the world, or whoever the villain is, right? This is now maybe this is somebody's fault because somebody wanted to produce this, which is a different conversation, and there's plenty of incentive for things like that to happen. But as far as the apparatus is concerned, anyway, so the Netherlands' response was to basically anesthetize the system so they're not losing businesses because of a biological crisis, because it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I like the way you put that, though.
But the U.S. is the worst of the worst because it picks winners and losers.
Right, and the winners are, of course, the people who already were winning.
The U.S. government's the worst because they exploit it.
Exactly right.
They're like, this is a chance to just run the table when nobody's look. You're like, are you kidding me? Like, now you're going to go in and rob the bank? Right. Come on. Anyway.
Well, Dylan, thank you.
Well, if people don't know, Dylan is the first person who ever put me on television. So known each other for a long time. It's great to talk to you, Dylan. Your insights are always invaluable, so we really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dylan.
Well, it's nice to talk to you guys. You're doing great, and keep on keeping on. You guys are working it, and it's impressive. So enjoy yourselves.
Thank you, brother.
All right.
Coming up, AOC weighs in on Biden accuser Tara Reade, and so does a New York Times columnist. Their takes are a little bit different. That when Rising continues.